Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is a short video created for the new Boston. Now, in this part of our operators, when we're looking at operators, we need to think about an operator that doesn't just deal with equating the value, but we have to look at the data type as well. So let's just give an example of num1, and I'm going to equal this to 1, and that's in a string. So we've got a string with the value 1. Now num2, and that's going to equal 1, but as an integer data type. So now what happens if we create an if statement and we actually compare these two values? So let's compare num1 to num2. So we're using the double equals operator, which is equal to, essentially. Let's echo equal, else echo not equal. Okay, so this is a basic if statement. We're saying num1, if num1 is equal to num2, echo equal, otherwise echo not equal. So let's just open up our browser and refresh and preview what we get. So we've got equal here, so we're essentially saying that 1 does equal 1. However, if you look at this from a logical point of view, we've got 1 as a string, so we've got our single quotation marks around it, and 1 here is an integer. So this is in fact a number, this is in fact a string. Now what PHP has done is it's dealt with this as a 1 in itself, and it's dealt with this as a 1 in itself, so they're essentially the same character, even though this is an integer and this is a string, so therefore it's saying that they are equal. Then what happens if we want to say, is num1 actually equal to num2? You know, in reality, if I was to say the number 1 or a picture of the number 1, they are the same thing, but we need to think about the difference between numbers and a graphical representation, so a string of something. So for this we use the triple equals comparison operator. So instead of putting two equals, remember equal is an assignment operator, this is a comparison operator. Triple equals is also a comparison operator, but what triple equals does is it will compare not just the value, but it will also compare the data type. So if the data type does not match in this case using the triple equals, then we're going to be echoing out not equal, because this statement here will be validated false. So let's give that a go. Let's come and refresh. Okay, so you can see that now, just by adding in that extra equal symbol, we're now saying not equal. So we now know that 1 as a string data type is not equal to the number 1. So why is this useful and when might you use it? Now it's useful for the obvious reason that we may want to convert, we may want to keep our comparisons as literal as possible. We want to say it must equal, the number 1 must equal number 1. Now for example, if I was submitting form data and I was to type in a number 1 and we were comparing it to number 1 as in a 1, we wouldn't use the triple equals operator. We would compare it like this, because this is still the number 1. So there's places you can use it and places you can't use it. I mean, a lot of people tend to use it even when they don't actually need to, but it's just for added sort of comparison integrity, if you like. So you'll find that perhaps in other instances you find this, other times you may need to use the triple equals, especially in some of my tutorials as well. I tend not to use it a lot, but in things like dealing with files as well, we might need to use it as a literal. So this is the triple equals comparison operator, and hopefully you will find some use for it when you are comparing exact values and you want to check data types as well. This is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this video created for the new Boston is going to talk you through PHP while loops. Now, why do we use loops in the first place as programmers? Now, we may need to repeat a certain amount of actions a specified amount of times, and in a couple of these videos I'm going to be talking about while loops and then do while loops, and then we're going to go on to for loops as well. So what do we mean by a loop? A loop, let me just show you the syntax first of all, is
for a while loop anyway is while a certain condition is true. So we're sort of, you know, if you understand if statements, you should really understand this. We're saying while something is true, do something in here. So for example, at the moment I'm going to say echo hello, and I'm going to break down a line. So while a certain condition is true, now if I was to just pop a 1 in here, it would be a pretty bad idea, because 1 is always going to be true, as we've discussed in previous videos. 0 is always going to be false. So we can run this one if we refresh. That's fine, nothing's happened, the page hasn't crashed. However, if we do while equals while 1, this is always going to equal true, so we're probably going to crash the page in writing hello over and over again, basically until infinity. So it's an infinity amount of times, or infinite amount of times rather. However, if we create a statement in here that allows at some point for it to evaluate to false, but while we want it to evaluates to true, we can sensibly echo this an amount of times. So let's say I want to echo hello 10 times. I can create a counter up here, and I'm going to start that at 1. Now what I want to do is I want this loop to echo, or I want this loop to execute, so run this block of code until 1 equals 10. So we're echoing once, twice, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 10 times, and then once this counter equals 10, we stop the loop, therefore breaking this block of code here, and we continue to the rest of our code down here. So if this doesn't make sense, follow along my example, and hopefully it will do soon. So we'll get rid of the condition first of all, and what I want to do is I want to say counter plus plus. Remember, this is incrementing this value each time. So now we've, for the first time probably, you may have found a use for incrementing. Obviously we can do counter equals counter plus 1, but for shorthand, counter plus plus. Now the condition will be when counter is or while counter is smaller than or equal to 10. So what we want to do is say while counter is smaller than or equal to 10. Okay, and this is basically saying if counter equals 1, run the loop. Now counter is going to equal 2 on this line, so counter will then equal 2, and then we'll run this again. It's still smaller than 10, so say hello, and now counter equals 3. So 3, this still is blah 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 all the way up to 9. Now 9 is still smaller than 10. We echo hello, we increment the counter, it's 10. Now counter equals 10, so we run this, this will equal 11. So 11, now this condition is now rendered false. It evaluates to false, so we're not going to execute this code in here. So hopefully that is a way of making sense to it for you. We're going to reset this counter back to 1, and we're going to refresh the page and see what happens. So now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times we've echoed hello. And to prove this sort of counter method inside, I'm going to append the variable counter onto the start of this hello. So this will actually say 1 hello, and then it will say 2 hello, and it will say 3, because we're incrementing this value each time. So it's basic logic. So let's refresh the page and see how that's worked. There we are. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 10, and you can now see just by that example that we're incrementing the value. So the while loop will always have a condition at the start of it that will need to be evaluated before we even begin to process the block.